everybody. Welcome to the Shrimp City Report. My name's Devin. Today I'm joined with co-host DJ. How are you doing today?
I got to say, I'm a little thrown back. This is the first person I think we've interviewed without a Southern accent.
Well, I do have a Southern accent. I'm from the south of England.
True.
That is right. That's right. And we're joined by Tim Polecat. He is performing at Rockabillaque Festival this weekend in Charleston, North Charleston, in Park Circle. As part of our minicast sessions we are doing with musicians, I got to say, Tim Polecat is really one that I couldn't wait to talk to. Being a 57-year-old that's been listening to punk and alternative out of England since I was a child. Tim, it's really awesome to have you on.
It's great to be on here. Actually, it's my first time playing in the South, apart from once in Nashville. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, wow. Well, you came to a really good town for it. Charleston is super hospitable, and Park Circle is absolutely the most progressive place around here. So
Absolutely.
You'll be well received. So you said you were from London. What part of London?
I'm from a suburb in North London. It's a place called Mill Hill. It's quite famous. I mean, there's been a few Doctor Who's from there, and Patrick McGowan's from there, Roger Moore, Cliff Richard. I mean, it's quite it's just on the outskirts of central London, but not quite the burbs. Not quite the burbs, really.
Or how old were you when you started picking up music? Was that still in London then?
Yeah, I was. Well, quite young. There's a picture of me in 1975 with an electric guitar and creepers on. So I started playing guitar when I was 10, had my first electric guitar when I was 12. And then when I was, as soon as I got that guitar, a 13-year-old boy from my scouts called Boz Borer came and knocked on my door and said, "Are you the boy with the electric guitar?" And I went, "Yeah." And then we formed a band right there. I think it was 1976. Yeah. There was only two of us for a long time, though.
Yeah. So coming up when you were young, was playing music a cool option with your parents or the neighbors, or was England at that time just like, or your neighborhood kind of, let's go watch the football match or something?
Yeah, it was a bit like that, but there was also a lot of subculture stuff coming up. I mean, this is talking pre-punk here, so we were listening to 50s rock and roll and glam rock and Bowie and stuff like that, and pop music. But and what we later discovered was called rockabilly, but we didn't really think of it as at the time. It was just vintage rock and roll.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot to do. It was raining all the time. Everything was in black and white. It was cold outside, so you didn't have that much money, so you sat on the edge of your bed, learned to play guitar, read comic books, and that was it.
We love comic books. We used to have a comic book podcast.
I'm actually a comic book dealer now, but I've been collecting since 1970 American comics.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I know a lot about it. I'm also a production designer. I've production designed 200 of the top music videos of all time, but that's another subject.
Yeah, it is.
About the Polecats, right?
Yeah, we could geek out on that.
I have a book ready to go. But yeah. So subculture stuff. I mean, that's what we were into. You know, we were into old movies, comic books, playing guitar, rock and roll, and then we were basically teddy boys. That's the way we looked.
Okay.
We were kids. We were little kids. I mean, we were, early teens. We looked like teddy boys, and then punk came along. And we kind of folded in some of that stuff. We never became an out-and-out punk band because we realized by the time that we were able to go out and play in clubs, it would be over. And we were right. It was over. The flood of it was over.
For the Americans that do not know, can you describe what the Teds were, or what was that little subculture?
Okay, so originally the Teddy Boys were the first youth culture from the 1950s in England. They were the post-war kids that had a little bit of money. Is when working class kids had their own money for the first time. They wanted to be different from their parents and be like American teenagers. So they would dress flash, be hooligans, do their own thing, listen to rock and roll music. Although I think they listened to jazz before rock and roll or rhythm and blues, because the Teds kind of predate rock and roll a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, they were the first youth culture. They predated the mods and the punks and the skinheads. but yeah, out of the same mold kind of thing.
So how did your band go from a very punky scene to, I guess, developing into more of a rockabilly style? Was that more of influence from like the Americas or?
No, I mean, to be honest, when we were listening to those rare rockabilly records, there was no people in America had abandoned it. The British are very good at going through America's trash and getting stuff out of it. The Beatles did it with rhythm and blues and all the British invasion bands. So we just did it with old rockabilly records from the one-hit wonders from the South and stuff people had forgotten. No one knew who Gene Vincent or Eddie Cochran even was in America. But in Europe, these people were icons in the subculture scene.
Any records particularly stand out for you when you were listening as a kid?
Yeah, there's one, Hank Mazzell, Jungle Rock. It's an out-and-out rockabilly record, a very rare record from the 50s. But for some reason, it got released as a novelty record in the 1970s in Britain and went to the top of the charts. So that would be one of them. There was many. I mean, it was more kind of record because we had these compilation albums came out in the 1970s called Rare Rockabillys, and all the different major labels discovered they had stuff in their archives that no one had heard before, and that's kind of where we got our inspiration from. So we mixed that with the punk energy and a bit of the punk look. We kind of mixed the two together. Although we said we were later described as neo rockabilly, I guess.
Yeah,
I saw that a lot. Just like your video and all, you could tell the fashion and the image was distinctive. It was a nice meld of everything. One thing I do want to ask, I was reading that there was actually a rockabilly circuit that you guys would play on, that England had a defined sets of clubs for that music?
Kind of rock and roll clubs. They were Teddy Boy clubs initially, and they were little groups of people all over the country. They were Teddy Boys, and then we would, because we crossed over into that scene, we would go out and play those. And to be honest, when the first time we went out of London, no one had seen a double bass, never mind a pink one. And there were other bands doing this same thing as us. There was a band called Levi and the Rockettes, but they moved to America, and there was a band in America called Buzz and the Flyers, and a few other people. But generally speaking, around the country, no one had seen that.
Did you ever feel frustrated? Well, I don't know. I guess frustrated might not be the proper word, but you started 77 in that era. I mean, that was punk was coming out, ska was hitting, early synth pop. It just seems like there's so many pots in that cupboard. Did you ever feel like you would get lost in the mix?
No, I think there was room for lots of different. In those days, they were actually much more open-minded. There was, although in England those kind of tribes would literally fight at one time. That when that died out, I mean, there was room in the mainstream for all of the cult things. In the 80s, all the cults were in the charts. It's really now music's become so homogenized, and it's way too easy to make now. So you don't have such desperate individuals making it. I think it was actually good for that. We had to work for it, but yeah, we weren't worried by electronic bands and ska bands and stuff. Right. That was great that there was lots of different kinds of music around.
Cool, because sometimes in America it seems like there's a trend and then it's full stop and then next to the next one. It's almost like they just, nothing can.
Right. I think though in the 80s it all kind of existed at the same time. But yeah, I get that. There was a definite thing in England where punk kind of stopped by 1979. It was pretty much gone, and those other things were coming along as well. It was just like a smashed window, and then people went in the shop and stole different things. Yeah.
So you grow up, consuming a lot of, I guess, American iconography and media like that. What eventually got you to the States?
It was music, and I worked in the film business. I was an art director and production designer. So I had a chance to get a green card to move to America in 1989. And I've lived in California and New York ever since. I lived in New York for a short amount of time, but mostly in California. And I still live there. I live in Palm Springs, California now.
Right on, mid-century.
Oh, yeah, it's totally mid-century.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I moved there, actually. I was out there vintage shopping and bought a house.
That's the perfect place for you to be.
Yeah.
But I lived previous to that. I lived in Hollywood. I loved Hollywood in the 90s. It was great fun.
Mm-hmm. Did you get schooling for your art direction and all that stuff, or is that something you just picked up?
I had 1 year at art school before getting a record deal. In 1979, I was at art school, and my dad phoned up me. He phoned up when I was on an art retreat and said, "You better come back to London. You're getting a record deal with Phonogram." So I came back and left.
Holy smokes!
I mean, that's a great reason to leave.
Yeah, I was only 6. So I just turned, when we got our record deal, I just turned 17. We'd already had an indie record. We had an indie record out in 1979. So when in the things like, there's a book called The Punk Rock Diary, which has every event from the 1970s, and that's in there. Like, we had a record out in the 1970s, even though it was at the end. But our major record deal with Mercury Records was in 1981.
Okay, so you achieved out of the gate, basically. So that's
yeah. We've been playing for a while, but we were kids. I had to have a children's entertainer's license and stuff like that.
Really, I didn't know that.
There was two people that were younger than me, though. Annabella Lewin from Bow Wow Wow, and I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the guitarist from Flock of Seagulls. He was younger than me, and then the two girls from Human League. I think they were just a few months older. In those days, you could be 17, 18 and be a pop star. Yeah. And in the 50s, those guys were, 18, 20, the big hitters. So it's only now you start your first band when you're 35.
Yeah, I remember when I first read about, like, the drummer for Eater was 15 or something. I was like,
Degenerate, yeah.
Yeah, how is that possible, Well,
because his mum was all right with it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's wild. So you got to LA, Palm Springs, you did your art thing. Were you always playing kind of at least pick up stuff there, or did you put it on the shelf?
I've done a few different things, actually. So we've always had the Polecats going, and when there was a big show, I would just commute back to England. So we had that, and then around 1998, 99, I did a band with Slim Jim from the Stray Cats.
Yep.
It's called 13 Cats, which was a even more neo rockabilly band. We actually got a deal with Sony in Japan. It was Slim Jim, Smutty Smith from the Rockettes, and Danny Harvey from the Rockettes. It wasn't supposed to really be like a super group. We just lived nearby and were friends, and said, "Hey, let's do a band." And we wrote, a set full of material, and released a record. And I still play with Jim sometimes. A lot of these bands, we have kind of interchangeable members. So, I did that. I've done other things. I produced, you couldn't really cram in what I've done in my 61 years in this 15 minutes, because I've done a lot of stuff.
You probably
books worth of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, you probably couldn't do it in a mini series, really,
No, I could literally start it on a book, and there's 150 chapters already of stuff I want to cover of unusual, crazy stuff. If it's to do, when I was an art director, I'd meet famous people every day. So a lot of it was that.
So your life has been full, that's for sure.
No, it's been full, yeah. Still full. I'm still youthful. I'm 61 now, so but I still put on a show. If you see, you can look on YouTube and see, I'm not just planted on the spot. I still put on the same show. I'm just older.
So, how are you liking the Starlight Hotel or Motel?
I love it. It's great. Obviously, it's not such a culture shock because I live in Palm Springs, and lots of things in Palm Springs look like this.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like Palm Springs, all mid-century looking.
So who are you?
You're used to skipping winter during the late season, then?
Yeah, it is. It's very hot out there, and everything's mid. I have to say that I don't live in a mid-century house. My house it's just completely black. It's painted completely black from the outside. It's all kind of voodoo rock and roll mid-century inside, and then cool. The back's all tiki. But the outside is black and very, very, and there's palm trees with crows in them. It's quite
that's awesome.
A little bit monsterish, actually.
Quite inviting. You're playing tomorrow. What's your lineup like? Are you going to do trio? What are you going to do on that?
Oh, so I'm playing with Jared Petty's band.
Oh, yeah.
So I usually have besides the Polecats in England, I usually have guys over here to do it, in America to do it, but I have a little pool of people. But I've never played with Jared before. I needed to find some guys, and these looked like the I kind of just Googled the best guy in town.
He's absolutely, they are phenomenal.
Yeah.
My old band played with them several times, so they are excellent.
He'll be here momentarily, and he says, he's nailed the song, so I take it, he's a great player. So
I guess we could. I have a quick question. What'd you make of the American revivalist Robert Gordon?
Well, I knew Robert.
Oh, you did?
Well,
okay.
Actually.
Yeah, and he passed a couple of years ago, I guess.
Yeah, he was a friend. So I know that he told me that when he got the Polecats record, and probably the Stray Cats one, but he told me the Stray Cats, the Polecats. He said he went to his record company and said, I need to be doing stuff more like this, more modern. And he always maintained that. But he's a tremendous vocalist. His voice to be just one of the best. Better than the people in the 50s, to be honest. He's just amazing. He was quite a controversial character.
Yeah.
But he was a friend of mine, so I have stories about him, but they'll probably end up in the book as well.
Okay. I guess we could wrap it up and let you go since Jared's going to be over there. I want to encourage anyone that's listening to go see the Make It Circuit with Me video. Catch everything you can with the Polecats. And do you have anything else to plug? And how can we best find you on the internet?
Well, yeah, I'm on Instagram, Tim Polecat on Instagram. You see a picture of me. That's the best way to find me. I mean, I don't have a website anymore. That's kind of been pushed by the wayside. I am on Facebook, but I've reached my quota of people. So I guess Instagram.
Okay.
Tim Polecat, Instagram. Just Google me. I'm easy to find.
All right, that sounds perfect. We'll also include some items in the show notes so folks can find you, and we will see you tomorrow afternoon.
The same way you found me on Instagram.
That's right. That's right. And we
that's the best way.
Hey, and thanks again for responding. We really
Absolutely,
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure.
Okay.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody else, we will catch y'all in the next podcast. DJ, anything?
Nope, all good.
All right, then we're out. Ciao.
See you later. Bye.